If you hear the letters GTI, what do you think of? Peugeot? Could be, but no. GTI have been the power letters of the Volkswagen Golf for 41 years now. In that test, the 7th generation with the facelift and the performance package. But does it still have the best price-performance ratio in that class, or is the GTI the former leader of the Gran Turismo injectors? See in that test how much 2017 the car really is. And what else the facelift changed, except the optics. Now!
Hey guys, I'm Chris and I'd like to welcome you to that in-depth car review of the Golf VII Facelift GTI Performance, as you can see it here. That means 15 additional horsepower to 245 instead of 230 horsepower at the front wheels, coming along in that beautiful red rare color. And altogether that package makes it one of the most interesting hot hatches on the market, as it is the only hot hatch having a history of almost 40 years behind these three letters GTI. At first sight, you might say that there isn't so much that's changed with the facelift, but there is, especially from the interior. But we're going to get it started now with the optical impression that the facelift brings.
The Golf VII is one of the best-selling cars from Volkswagen, so visually Volkswagen hasn't done that much. Only little details that outsiders might not see immediately. But still a bit, the LED graphics got a smooth change so that the red GTI strip in the grille now looks longer and the car from the front view wider, and the air intakes have been redesigned, but that's all from the front. Besides this, full LED headlights replace the xenons and are standard in higher equipped models like the GTI. Also, the indicators look different now. The red accents like in the grille are GTI typical, and a nice detail, maybe not that visible now as the painting of the car is also red. 18-inch rims and red brake calipers underline the sportiness. The biggest change of the facelift is the backlights, as their graphical change is more visible, starting with the LED as itself, through the indicators that are now, such as Audi's dynamic indicators. The rest is still the same. Two classical exhaust pipes and the GTI logo that you shouldn't be missing. Many GTI clients have a family, so even new GTI customers will be interested in the boot or trunk load that offers 380 liters with a platform that you can lower or higher, depending on your needs. If you skip the back seats, 1270 liters are possible. So enough for a normal family of three. As already mentioned, the GTI now has 245 horsepower with this performance package instead of the normal 230, with 370 Nm of torque and a front differential. Also really important with the GTI, the exhaust sound. I'd say gain your own impression. For every fan of gimmicks, if you order a rearview camera, it flops out of the Volkswagen logo on the trunk lid. Like that, it's protected against damage and dirt.
I don't even know where to start with the interior check. So the main eye-catcher is that nice huge display that we can see here. It's borderless panel design and glass, so it's not matte, it's glass, and of course like that you can see many finger taps, but this is the price that you have to pay for a touchscreen, especially with that size. So it looks really nice. The only thing is if you switch it off, you can see the finger taps everywhere. The overview is kind of nice, so it's nice overview. You don't have to watch the user's manual, it's kind of self-explaining, you know everything here. And yeah, so we've got 2 pages, and what I'm really surprised about is the in-depth possibilities, the setting options that you have in that car. You can set so much that I was really surprised, because it's not because of it's just a Golf. I hate that sentence when people say it's just a Golf, but it's still the fact that it costs a lot less than a Mercedes, BMW or Audi, and gives you as much as, or maybe even more setting possibilities than the others. I'm coming from the BMW, and I have the connected drive, which is state of the art of the systems, and still I can find things here that go more in depth, just like the BMW does. Let me show you here. Car check. Here we have a monitor for power output overview, just like turbo pressure, power, and even the centrifugal forces, just like G-force if you might be driving on a racetrack. But let's go into the settings. You can set everything here. Lights for the foot space, the driving assistance, you know, setting how sensitive they shall be, when they should warn you, late or really early, lane assist, blind spot sensor, fantastic. I'm going to be showing you that later on when we drive the car, how sensible, useful, and maybe even life-saving that might be with that blind spot sensor that not every car offers, especially my BMW doesn't. You can set the wipers. Yeah, the rear window wiper always started to work when I used the reverse gear for driving backwards, and it was totally annoying me. But then I found out that you can deactivate it. It's fantastic. The mirrors, shall they skip when you leave the car, or just fold in or not? Units, really good. This I don't have in my BMW, or I haven't looked for it, I have to be honest, but I think the BMW doesn't have it. It's nice for people living in the UK, living in Australia, or American people who live in Europe and haven't got used to that fuel consumption average of litres per kilometre. They can change it into miles per gallon. US version, miles per gallon. UK version, you can select the pressure you want to have, bar, PSI or KPA, Fahrenheit or Celsius for the temperature. So really in-depth possibilities, really lots of in-depth possibilities that we've got here. You can set that instrument from here, everything, so it's kind of a nice and really surprising me, I have to be honest. Let's have some quick last words for the nav about the gesture control. It has a gesture control, and it's the only compact car right now on the market offering gesture control. But I regard it as senseless, because it's not so, it's a bit limited with its functions. So it has a sensor strip here, and you have to be exactly in front of that sensor strip for doing these wipe moves. And I think while driving and looking straight on, you can't watch whether you're just in front of that sensor or not, and then of course you have to look down again, and then you lost the security aspect. And I've got used to classical buttons on the steering wheel for many years now, and before I think about having a gesture control, I have already pushed the buttons here on the steering wheel, just like changing radio channel, putting up the volume, answering phone calls or whatever. In my eyes, it's not really necessary, though I'm a guy who really loves to make the crosses on the option list. Even if I don't need options, it's better to sell the car afterwards. If the more options you have, the better it is to sell it. But in my eyes, that gesture control, yeah, you have it in the car if you order that big nav anyway, so why not having it? But it's not so senseful in my eyes, especially because if you are in a nav mode, you can't skip the radio channel, because you have to be in the radio mode for skipping the radio channel. I'll show you that quickly now. Okay, now changing. See that? So it's nice and it works quite reliably, but the thing is, when you drive, you might not be wiping in front of that sensor, and of course it doesn't swap the channel, and this might be annoying a bit, of course. So yeah, it's this about the gesture control. Let's get to the digital dashboard that we now have, also in the Golf. This is totally new, because until now the pre-facelift used to have an analog display or instrument. You can still have the analog ones if you want to, but I really highly or just deeply recommend you to take that digital dashboard, because it's a lot more modern, it looks better, and it gives you a lot more functions. Just for example, the possibility to have the nav screen here on that middle part of that dashboard, while having here the radio. So here you have radio, here you have nav, also bird view, also real time, so also traffic live info, and many other settings, just like you can set these two round instruments that you can see from that camera, and instead of having the speed here in the middle, you can set also other things just like fuel consumption average or whatever you'd like to put there. You can put it there, and this is of course really practical. You can see now here it says the rest range, how much fuel consumption you have, and you can put there everything that you want to. And then of course audio, telephone, stages of the car, and lap timer when driving on a racetrack maybe, and every info that you can imagine, you can have it here on that screen. And this is of course really helpful, nice, modern, so I definitely recommend you to take it. And the rest of the car is fantastic. So it's surprisingly lot of space. You know, you can see I've still got lots of headroom. I'm not really kept in a tight place. The seats have fantastic lateral support. Though it's not leather, it looks really nice with these GTI typical patterns, and they feel nice. So they're soft, and we've got these blendings here with some ambilights being red at night, because red is the typical GTI color. You can see the stickings around the steering wheel in red, and even in the grille at the front you can see that red lines. Even in the headlights you can see that red lines. So that's a nice detail, but these things aren't really new about that car. The parking pilot, parking sensors, and of course the traction control, put it on and off, the golf ball, typical golf ball gear shifter, and the air condition unit down here being a bit low. Many people criticize that it's a bit low, just like the center display, but I think it's something that you can definitely live with. Everything is nice. It's a car that offers you really a lot for a lot less money than the premium class segmented cars. So much about that, and now it's time to drive that GTI. .245 horsepower, 2-litre 4-cylinder. This is a special moment for me because my first car was the great grandson of this car, the Golf I GTI, with a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder, 112 horsepower, not the 1.6 litre. And with its 112 horsepower and less than 1,000 kilograms, I felt like the king on the road, and I thought that I can mess up everyone on the streets. If of course it wasn't like that, as I wasn't driving in the 80s, but the power is nice, so it pushes forward just like you expect 245 horsepower to push you forward, and the turbo gives a nice pressure, but you have to know in which gear you have to be for the perfect acceleration. It has a little bit of a power leak, so a little bit of a turbo hole, and that means from 3,500 RPM it starts pulling, and then it's kind of nice. So overtaking on the country road and driving on the country road is fantastic. This is actually the perfect area. This is the home base of the GTI. It's a Gran Turismo and not the sports beast, because we know nowadays almost modern diesels with a 4-cylinder have as much power as this GTI has, even if it's the performance version that gives you 15 horsepower more than the regular Golf GTI. So it's not like being the fastest at the green light, because for that you need all the other hot hatches like Golf R, maybe, with an additional 65 horsepower, and what else we have? Honda Civic Type R, the Ford Focus RS MK3, yeah, you know, so you have a big offer of these hot hatches being faster, and they are definitely faster. And this here is something that now has a history of almost 40 years, and of course that makes the car special, and it proves that actually 245 horsepower nowadays is enough to have. Only if you're really a hard car enthusiast just like me, then you want to have more and even more and more. Take a look at that. The Mercedes is too slow for us. But it's a fantastic car, so I have to be honest, and what's surprising me deeply is the chassis. It's a fantastic stiff chassis. It's not wobbling in the curves. It's stable. You have that kind of go-kart feeling that we only know from the Mini Cooper John Cooper Works. I can't really tell you if it is as stiff and go-kart like, just like the Mini is, but it's really close to that. And that's really surprising me, because it's still only a GTI and not a sharp R version or whatever. And this is a positive thing in my eyes, because if you are not willing to drive the granddad mode, you can have some nice curvy roads and crack on. But of course, a stiff chassis mostly means that you are not really having a comfortable ride, especially in countries like South Italy, for example. You've got lots of potholes. But I tell you, this is the second thing about the chassis that was totally surprising me. Driving over potholes is so smooth that I can't really tell you how Volkswagen did that, having a chassis, a suspension being that stiff and hard, and still driving over potholes a comfortable way like that. So it's a lot more comfortable than my BMW, for example. You're sliding over the pothole, and this is one of the biggest positive things about the GTI that I have experienced in the past 5 days now, especially driving on country roads. So you can see it's not wobbling, it's still stiff on the road, and that impresses me a lot. Same about the brakes. The brakes are really intensive, so if you hit the brakes, it's I think in my eyes a class above the GTI. It has harder brakes than actually necessary for these 245 horsepower. Of course, again, positive, because many people, especially driving a GTI Performance, drive fast on the autobahn, and then of course you've got reliable brakes, or on the racetrack maybe. This is again something really positive about the GTI. The brakes are more for 300 horsepower than for these 245, and I love it. Altogether, the driving experience package is kind of nice with the Golf. I want to say something about the transmission, but for that we switch to the city traffic mode. We have a 6-speed manual gearbox, as you can see, with the classical Golf bar on top of the gear shifter. Like we've been knowing that for almost 40 years now from the GTIs. And this is a nice detail, I love it, but unfortunately this is the only positive thing that I can say about the manual transmission, not this manual transmission, about manual transmissions as a topic in that car class. It's not like it used to be back then, when manual transmissions used to be better than automatic. Everything changed now, and you know, you have a lot faster gear shifting time with the available 7-speed double clutch DSG box. It's more efficient, higher gears, less RPM, less fuel consumption. It's a lot more comfortable. You have to see, in city traffic, always accelerating, decelerating, shifting up, shifting down, and your clutch leg gets kind of exhausted after a quarter of an hour in the city traffic. This is what I've experienced now in the past 5 days that I've been driving around with this car. And there is, in my eyes, nothing that speaks for the manual transmission. Though it's crunchy and it has nice ways between the gears, just like the Seat Leon Cooper 300, it's not as crunchy as the Seat's gearbox, but it's nice. And it makes fun of just to shift, but maybe just because I know that after giving back this car to Volkswagen, I will drive my automatic transmission again. And yeah, it's all of that. And the position of the gears, take a look at that. Now, this is the 4th gear, but it looks like the neutral gear. And many times at a red light, it might be possible that you get off the clutch because you're thinking you're in a neutral gear, but the car jumps forward because it's the 4th gear, and that might cause embarrassing moments for you because, you know, the positioning is kind of a bit confusing. And if you haven't got used to the Golf's gearbox, so if you are a new Golf GTI client, this And the biggest thing missing in that car with the manual gearbox is the coughs out of the exhaust. So that typical DSG fart. I know it's not a DSG, but the Seat Leon Cupra, where you can see the test on top right now here, that I tested, did these coughs and farts, though it was a manual transmission, and this one doesn't do it. So if you want to have these coughs out of the exhaust, you have to take the automatic transmission, and then you can have that. Though I know that there is some purists who say the only driving experience that you have is with the manual transmission on the land, on a country road, just like now, for overtaking and shifting back and shifting up. But I think after 2 weeks you get bored by this, and you wish you would have chosen the manual, the automatic transmission, but then it's too late, because mostly we drive city traffic and not country roads and not racetracks. So really sit down and think about what's your driving profile, and then it's up to you, but I recommend you to take the automatic transmission in every aspect. But does it really make a difference to drive in a sport and comfort mode? So this is what we can try out now. Let's take the eco mode, and immediately I can feel it's a lot more smoother. So the steering is as butter, yeah, so it's really soft. Take a look at that. And then the engine sound is a lot smoother as well, so it's not roaring that deep in a high gear. It's a lot smoother, so you can have a nice comfortable ride like that. But of course, as we're driving a GTI, we switch back to the sports mode, and now suddenly the engine sound, as you can hear, comes. It's nice. No other car in that class offers you more. Actually, I have to be honest, I'm a bit disappointed that my BMW, though it's being called a premium class car, doesn't offer as much options as this car. Starting with the lane assist. Lane assist in that case doesn't mean that the steering wheel only is just vibrating when you change the lane without using the indicator. No, this means that it corrects the lane and it keeps you in the lane even if you don't have your hands on the steering wheel. And this is the technology of 2017 that I expect from a car, and you get it in the Golf. Then you have the active cruise control, keeping the distance to the car driving in front of you. And this is something that I can demonstrate now. Set, just look at that. Let's set it to a bit more, let me say 110 kilometers an hour. And then we are driving behind this car, and we're not getting closer, as the active cruise control just keeps the distance, the perfect distance. Okay, it's a bit more than you might do it on the Autobahn when driving yourself, but it's okay if you drive longer distances. You could hear that beep. This beep tells me to put my hands on the steering wheel again, and if you don't do that, you get another beep, which is again a bit louder. This one here, and if you still don't touch it, it hits the brakes. Could you see that? That wasn't me. That was the car hitting the brakes, because he thinks that I'm asleep, and like that he's trying to wake me up, and this is fantastic. Then the blind spot warning. My gosh, how deeply I wanted to have that in my BMW. This is not like I can't drive a car and I need some assists, but this is something that can rescue lives, especially in city traffic like Munich. Every year we've got so many people dying because they're driving, especially cyclists, in the blind spot, and cars are just crashing these people because they can't see them. So blind spot warning should be a standard in cars nowadays, in my eyes. But I'm praising that GTI that much that now there has to come up some little criticism about the nav. It's the traffic info, the live traffic info. And the only problem with this, in my eyes, is that I think they should have done more than the main roads and the main highways. This Autobahn here is green, and every road around it, which is not a main road, is just colorless, so you have no traffic info for that. And this is a bit, you know, they could have done it another way. Which people do buy the Golf VII GTI? Well, it's the lifestylers. It's the people who pay more attention on a car that has kind of a cult status instead of having maximum performance, and having a car that offers a unique thing that no other hot hatch in that class offers. It's the 40 years history of the GTI. What else do you get? You get lots of space in every aspect, starting with a trunk load of 380 litres, with a platform that you can lower or higher depending on how you need it. And of course, you can use that car as a family car, except you have 2 or 3 children. And you could even say that it's kind of elegant depending on the color that you choose. And that red color is of course more aggressive, more just take a look at me, I'm coming. But there is an advantage of that red color. It swallows every kind of dirt like no other color that I have ever seen. And now let's come to the pros and cons and some neutral opinions about this car, starting with the pros. The infotainment and entertainment system hiding behind that is more impressive than I thought it would be. The safety helpers, the blind spot warning, then of course the active cruise control, the parking assist, and everything that you get offered in that package is fantastic. And again, sometimes a bit above the premium class segment of the compact cars. The power of 245 horsepower is also a pro, as you have 15 horsepower more than in the regular GTI without the performance package. And of course, the design is really something of, or some of the biggest advantages that this car gives. And of course, as the backlights deserve to be praised, also the front lights, not just because of the design, even that gorgeous selective beam. It's amazing how it does the cones around the cars driving in front of you or coming from the opposite side, for not blending them. It is advanced technology, and you feel like driving an S-Class Mercedes at night. Then of course we have also the cons, even if it's a lot less than the pros. The cruise control only works together with the active cruise control. This is something that it could have changed. I tested it several times, so it's not possible to drive the cruise control without the active cruise control. And that happens about 40 times that someone pulls from the middle lane to the left lane. It slows you down 40 times. And of course you always lose time like that, and you higher the fuel consumption average. Then the rims, unfortunately I have to put them on the con list because I really don't like the design, but it's not a big negative thing about that car because you can select anything else from the offer, or you can get some aftermarket rims and suddenly the car looks a totally different way. For the Golf VII Facelift GTI Performance, as you can see it here, fully equipped with all of that things that I have mentioned, with the safety helpers and everything. So it's not a low price, but it's an affordable price, and it makes the car more attractive just to throw an eye on it when you are looking for a quick hot hatch that doesn't have to be the quickest in the world, but maybe one of the most charming with these 3 letters. In the end, I can definitely recommend the GTI as a performance version. If you take the performance version, invest that additional money for having these 15 horsepower more with these kind of accents that belong together with the performance package, just like the front differential. This is Carmania. I hope you liked that in-depth car review of the Golf VII GTI Performance Facelift, and I hope I could help you with your decision of buying a hot hatch, or maybe just create a more beautiful time when you are waiting for your car and have already ordered your GTI. Don't forget to subscribe. Please forward that video to everyone that you know, and yeah, leave me comments how you like the video, and then we meet up again next time in the next Carmania video. Thank you very much for watching.